Hello everybody, I am Raven Shadow. This is Divide and Conquer, but specifically it's the expanded unit roster that recently came out. You know me, I like elves. I've been playing this game for a long time. I'm a veteran from the old days when the final version of 3rd Age Total War Vanilla came out, and I have had a lot of fun with it over the years, and I still love it. But I have to confess, I have a lot of notes. One of those notes is to do with a phenomenon I'm going to refer to as propeller creep. So, back in the day, in Vanilla 3rd Age Total War, Rune had this one staff weapon unit, the model for which I believe still gets used in Vanilla Divide and Conquer version 5. And that staff weapon unit has a dual-bladed weapon. Now, I could not find that unit on the expanded unit roster, which I was pleasantly surprised to discover, especially considering that lately I'm finding them everywhere else. I guess the people who are making the submods and stuff think that for some reason a dual-bladed staff weapon would be more of an elven thing, and I don't know, maybe it would be. I basically went through the Woodland Realm roster and picked out everything that I thought might be that, and well, I was wrong about the Elven King's Sword Guard, pleasantly. I didn't really expect to find them using it. However, I was abysmally right about the Elven King's Gate Guard and the Elven King's Palace Guard. So I want you to take a nice hard look at the weapons that these guys are using, and I want you to tell me if you have any questions or notes about it, because I sure do. In fact, you can see right now, down here by their feet, a little bit of a problem already. These weapons do not have a butt. Good staff weapons need a butt, at least for military campaigns. There's a one application in which many of my criticisms of this weapon don't apply, and that is dueling. Okay? 1v1, this weapon is not nearly so nonsensical, but as a military weapon, it's garbage. When you have a butt on your weapon, you have so much more you can do with it. You can use it as a walking stick, as these guys appear to be trying to do, but they've stuck it into the ground, and now they're dulling the blade of, well, one of the blades of their weapon. Fortunately, they've got another one, but you know that, like, if they get mixed up which one is the dull end, then they're gonna have to do twice as much sharpening, even if they haven't gotten into a fight. The maintenance on these things is gonna be crazy. It's insane. Nobody is going to take these to war, okay? Except for one reason that you might do that, which we will talk about later. Yeah, dueling, I can see an application for it, but even in that setting, I don't think you're going to get anything out of it that you couldn't get from a glaive or a messer, or like a wakizashi or something, anything that's not this. Because what you're gaining from having it be a staff weapon, you get from it being a glaive, and what you get from it being a cutting weapon, you also get from a glaive, but you also get from a messer, or a falchion, or what have you. Just a sword, just a regular sword. You get the same bonus, same benefit, same application, half the hassle, or maybe no hassle. No, not no hassle. No weapon is no hassle. Even your fists have an economy to them. But this weapon, this propeller, is a logistical nightmare. Another advantage to a staff weapon is that so you can have a lot of wood in your weapon and a little bit of metal, and that's a lot less metal that something can go wrong with, and the wood with which something is much more likely to go wrong, because there's more of it, is much more easily replaceable. In an army, your kit wears out or breaks. Spears break all the time, and swords break, especially the longer ones. They break, they get bent, they chip, they crack, things happen, and you have to do maintenance. And a dual-bladed weapon has twice as much blade, and when something does happen to the wood, you have to do twice as much work to get it ready for both blades. In a military setting, you want your weapon to be as replaceable as possible, because you will have to replace it unless it's literally magic. Anduril lasts because magic, I presume. And the most famous thing about Anduril is that it was broken. It used to be Narsil, Narsil got broken, it got reforged, it got fixed. Literally a key, pivotal piece of lore to one of the most important weapons in the world. There is no reason to give yourself that much extra hassle of upkeeping and maintaining an extra blade for your weapon, and probably enchanting an extra blade so that nothing happens to it, unless it's a really effective killer weapon. Like 3 or 4 times as effective as the weapon that it would be without that extra blade. And as it happens, there is such a disparity in real-world historical weaponry. The very common opinion is quite well documented that a spear is worth 3 swords because of the reach of a longer stick. That is not what we have going on here. It's a shorter stick on a less effective weapon with more stuff that can go wrong. And like when it was 1 unit in vanilla 3rd Age Total War on Rune's roster, it was a gimmick. It was goofy, it was kind of charming if I didn't feel like making myself pissy about it that particular day. Oh, I'm fighting in the part of the world where they use that one joke weapon. Time for a laugh. And when I was playing as Rune, which I did many times, it was just like, where's my actual infantry, though? I ended up using Balkoth Javelin Men as line infantry, basically. And you know what? That tactic worked surprisingly well back in vanilla 3rd Age Total War. I don't know if it still works in DAC. But I did use the boat propeller weapon because, like, it was the mid-tier unit. The alternative would have meant using the dual-wielding unit, which was a different kind of dumb. You had 2 joke units on the same tier of the same roster, which was very frustrating and basically the primary reason why I wound up always using Balkoth Javelin Men, as if they were Roman legionaries. And you know what? They held up great, because the runic bodyguard was this redonkulously overpowered cataphract that I absolutely loved pairing with them. Because, yeah, the infantry may be really weak on paper, but they've got a killer javelin. Yeah, you'll lose a lot of them in melee, but while they're tying the enemy up, the cavalry comes around, hits them in the back, and hey presto, you win! Massive victory. Huge losses, doesn't matter, because Balkoth can be quickly and easily replaced. Whereas when you lose the mid-tier joke troops, that's a financial investment that you don't understand why it's supposed to look. It's a massive break in immersion in both those cases, okay? I actually prefer the dual-wielding Snow Orc unit to the dual-wielding Khand unit, because one of the weapons in the Khand unit's dual-wielding fiasco was a reverse grip. And yeah, when I was a kid, I questioned myself, like, could this actually be made to work? Is there something that you can do with this? I went out into the backyard with a stick, I checked some shit out, I tried some things, and, you know, I had a lot of fun. Going out into my backyard with sticks was a lot of what I did as a kid. Back when I, you know, had 2 working knees and so much free time I could just whittle a handle into a stick. And what I found with dual wielding was that I could make it look really cool, but that I couldn't really see myself making it work in a real fight. And what I found with the staff weapons that I pretended had 2 sword blades on the ends was that I could kind of make it look cool if I deluded myself into thinking that kind of thing was cool, but I couldn't really imagine myself making it work in a fight. Again, dueling, yeah, the weapon might have some people, some adherents who would look at it and think, I could make that work in a duel. Okay, fair. Adhere to the wise teachings of Sho Kosugi on that one, go ahead. Agree with my teenaged self. If it's a staff weapon, it can and should hide extra blades. But in terms of effectiveness, and especially in terms of logistics on a military campaign, neither of those... Okay, the dual weapon thing can kind of make sense on a campaign because it's easier to carry an extra weapon than it is to carry a shield, but it's also a lot easier to carry an extra weapon than it is to carry an extra bladed weapon. because you cannot hang this on your belt. You have to carry it in your hand. With a butted weapon, that becomes an asset rather than a liability because you can use it as a walking stick. But this is not a walking stick, it has another blade down there. But I don't know, maybe there's a world out there somewhere in the multiverse where it's possible to do both, to devote your life to swordplay and serving your king and learning what works and what's effective and making adjustments to your kit to get that extra 1.5% increase to your survival odds and make yourself more effective as a blade master, as a bodyguard to your king, as a warrior first and foremost, as a person who understands what's going on with weaponry, and also you still stick swords in the ground and use a double-bladed weapon as a walking stick. I don't know, maybe there's one out there. It's not technically impossible. Look, if I can think of it, then somebody else can think of it, and if somebody else can think of it, they can write about it and justify it to their heart's content. That's how fiction works. If you want to create a world where that is justified somehow, go for it! I'll read your book. I'll comment on your videos. I might disagree with your logic, but I'll give you the engagement from it, and if you continue the trend of increasing the number of dual-bladed weapons in Middle-earth without justifying it somehow, then I'm gonna leech it for rage content. Because, you know, there's units like that on basically all the Elven rosters now? Maybe not the High Elves in Vanilla version 5, but the Elves of the Woodland Realm and the Elves of Lothlorien have this Girthanen thing. Girthanen unit. Hey, I can get their description. Silent Death. The Elves of Lothlorien have developed a guerrilla style of warfare over their long years in Middle-earth, and this ensures the safety of their realm as they strike unseen from many vantage points. See, that would be a great descriptor for a javelin or archer unit. Literally anybody who's not stupid enough to carry a dual-bladed weapon on a military campaign as a unit. However, among their stealthy ranks is an order of warriors who... Oh, okay, so that's the faction as a whole. That was not clear to me. So now we're talking about the Girthanen themselves. Among their stealthy ranks is an order of warriors who have mastered the art to a terrifying degree and can strike seemingly from the thin air. They are known only as Igurdinen. They fight for the Lord and Lady of Lorien whenever they call, and will often be the silent hand and control on the battlefield. They are a ferocious order who can hide in all manner of terrain, except ones that will dull their weapons, using their elven cloaks to blend in with any surrounding and then striking with deadly efficiency. With this weapon. Again, for dueling, maybe. On the battlefield, they use a unique double-bladed glaive. Is it still unique if literally every elven faction suffers it, which they wield with deadly skill? I suppose if you have deadly skill with weaponry of just about any kind, technically speaking, this particular weapon would be superior to no weapon at all. Or possibly even to some more conventional weapons like knives, because at least you have that much extra reach. However, I have a sneaking suspicion that a master of any weapon, much less of weaponry in general, would probably tell you that the best thing you can do with this weapon is to break it in half and use both blades independently, because dual wielding would be less inefficient. Anyway, they wield that allegedly with deadly skill and a cloak of the Galadhrim, but little armor, because armor is less useful on a military campaign for a stealthy unit than this weapon that is Such a stealthy thing. Definitely doesn't have twice as many glinting surfaces that can give away your position in the sunlight. Definitely is half as likely to hit metal on stone as you're walking around. Definitely doesn't have to be held at shoulder height above the grass as you're picking your way through a battlefield. Definitely isn't gonna poke your friend by accident and make him cry out in pain. Yeah, that weapon definitely makes more sense to carry on a stealth mission than armor. Like, who even bothers with armor anymore, am I right? Why even wear armor? Orcs can shoot right through plate with worse bows. In the Wheel of Time show, that pregnant lady throws a knife and it kills a guy through metal armor. Why would you bother to wear armor when you could carry a cool-ass propeller-bladed glaive instead? Isn't the rule of cool what really matters here? So they carry the unique, mind you, double-bladed glaive, which they wield with deadly skill, and a cloak of the Galadrim but little armor. This gives them excellent agility and a fine degree of lethality to themselves. Whilst they number only few, there's 100 in a unit. There's 107 of those guys, okay? Well, okay, the Gordinen has actually 152, so even more than these units, than our units. Whilst they number only 152, they can turn the tide of battle in one silent but mighty blow. Yes, they can, because that silent and mighty blow is going to kill the guy on your left the same way fighting in a shield wall would have protected him. Berioi Dailen. Shadows protect you. I cannot protect you from yourself or the guy on your right. Die well, my friend, whom I've just stabbed. Mantra of the Gurthinen. And this is telling me that it's pronounced Gurdinen. Guys, what are we doing? Okay, the really disgusting thing is that out of all the units that have this type of weapon, the Gurdinen might actually have the least stupid one. This one might actually make the least nonsense. Look, they're walking forward and the tip is not dragging along the ground. The blades are at least symmetrical, even if they're pointed in opposite directions. Like the edge, the curved edge is on opposite sides of these blades. That is bad. I can think of uses for that setup, but again, they only apply to dueling, not to military situations. If you want to take a weapon like this seriously, you gotta flip the edges around so that they're facing the same direction, okay? If you want to use this like a bow staff, and if you think it's a cool weapon, you're probably trying to use it like a bow staff, you need them facing the same way. Just twist the stick. Just make the blades face the same direction. That's all. That's like 10% of the problem fixed right there. Does nothing about the other 90%, but at least you got that 10%. Just make the edges on the blades face the same direction. And yeah, I do think it's a good thing that the blades are symmetrical. That is a help. But please make the edge face the same direction, okay? This will cut in half the number of allies that you cut in half. Secondly, if you want to fix this weapon the way it's represented on the battlefield, in order to justify the use of a weapon like this, they have to be insanely good. So good, in fact, that you would expect them to use any other weapon. But as they use this one, presumably they've got some martial art that they apply. And the first step to making that credible is, like I said, twist the blade around, make them face the same direction. Secondly, smaller units. These guys are going to be more effective the fewer of them there are. More widely spread out. Give them about the same area as they've got now, but make their formation a horde formation rather than a square, and make them spread out. Basically, make them trolls except elves, okay? 12 of them in a unit, and really stupendously hard to kill as individuals, but so far apart that they're not going to hit each other with their clubs. Thank God, they're at least not on horseback. I grabbed the Lorien Scouts because I wasn't sure if maybe they might have that going on as well. Fortunately, they don't. They just have this little dinky... You know what? It's a really... That is a good sword. That is a nice little kind of straight but kind of curved sword. This unit is serviceably kitted out. They're just trying to be scouts. There's nothing too horrendously bad about their kit. Probably ought to have some kind of missile weapon, but I'm not going to knock them too hard. At least the weapons that they do have make sense. The Gurdinen are supposed to be stealthy blade masters who are effective at their job. The way they're currently set up, that's not the case. And they're supposed to be unique in their use of this, of the boat propeller weapon. They're not, especially not with the expanded unit roster. I think maybe the Elven King's Gate Guard also had that in vanilla. And then over here, I think the Palace Guard is a new unit. But I don't know, maybe they were both there in vanilla. I don't remember. It's been forever since I tried playing the Woodland Realm. It's a really cool faction. One of my absolute favorites of all time. Right up there with Dorwinion, probably ahead of Gondor and the Aradanheim. Good factions and morally gray factions are so much fun, and bad factions are so depressing. But this just makes me angry. When it was the Rune unit in vanilla Third Age Total War, it was a one-off. It was a joke weapon. It was goofy and charming and unique. But now we're being asked to take this seriously. Okay, technically the Rune weapon was probably supposed to be taken seriously as well, but because it only happened the one time, it could be funny and goofy and charming. It's not any of those things anymore. This propeller creep is... Look, I'm not gonna say it has to stop. You can do whatever you want. You can make your mods however you want. You can even ask me to take them seriously. But I'm not going to. In order to take these guys remotely seriously, I have to reduce them to their stats. I have to spreadsheet them, rather than playing a game. At least the Wood Elves and the Lothlorien Elves don't put theirs on horseback. At least they're not Dorwinion with this expanded roster. Because, look at this. Look. Okay, you know what? We're actually gonna defend this a little bit. Because there are some ways in which using this, okay, so this unit is called Glade Lords. I assume they chose the word Glade because it sounds a little bit like glaive. And once again, well, you know what? This actually... This end looks kind of like it's meant to stab a little bit. Like, if you're using this in a duel, the near end is smaller and pointier, and that could have some application, okay? If you have a pike, then you have to keep your enemy at a distance. If he gets past your pike, you're in trouble. You could drop the pike and draw your sword, or you can raise the pike's head up above you and use the near end of it. So there is some kind of a little bit of practical application, and this particular kind of dual glaive could maybe make good use of that, okay? So we'll give it that little extra bit of point. But the name Glade Lords, I can only presume, again, that they chose Glade because it sounds a little bit like glaive, but it feels like they're trying to make up a word for this because it's such a logical concept that it needs a word of its own that isn't just double-bladed glaive. Or maybe they mean like a forest glade, as in these guys carry a dual glaive to war because their favorite hobby is sitting around in a forest glade reciting poetry about their anime self-inserts. Basically like self-identifying as an armchair warrior. I'm sorry, but unless there's a good reason for them to be called Glade Lords, the name just sounds stupid. The Moriquendi Glade Lords dedicate their eternal lives to safeguarding their woodland domain. That's what this is saying. Dedicate their lives to safeguarding their woodland domain. Presumably that means practicing with these travesties, or with a stick weapon that's meant to represent them, long enough to learn what a bad idea it is, and yet they still choose to carry them. Upon their steeds, clad in majestic elven armor, these horse lords ride into battle for the glory of their people. Norolim! Norolim! Insulting. All the Dorwinian units that are referred to as Glade anything have the same version of it, which, again, is not the worst one in here. But every criticism, mostly, still applies. It's still a logistical nightmare. It is still a horrifying weapon to stand beside because you know your friend is gonna stab you and you're gonna stab your friend. There are, however, a couple of advantages. I checked the High Elf units, all the ones I thought might have it. This Moonguard unit, I thought might still, but I looked real close down here, and it looks like their weapons are butted. These weapons have butts, which is good. You definitely want a butt on your weapon, especially if you're going to hold it like this while you advance, because if there was another blade down there, they would be cutting up their shins, or at least the cloth part of their armor. The rest of these units, I mean, these are actual glaives, but they're only one-bladed glaives. Not necessarily the best choice for cavalry, but you know what? That's defensible enough. I think we can rule of cool it. Okay? The Amanyar riders, yeah, they can stay. I like them. The Eldarinwe Roquen, same deal, but yeah, actually better, even. The horses do have a little bit of armor. I wish there was some on the front, as they are shock cavalry. And you don't let... Armor designs like this are why things like sharpened stakes are so effective, okay? Because the horse has nothing right where the stake is gonna go. Or the pike. Or even the halberd, okay? Give these poor creatures a shield on their chest. That's all I ask. But as far as their weapon goes, and even the armor of the elves themselves, this is great. This is a great unit. I like it. I love it. Well done. Thank you. These Region Heavy Knights, kind of the same deal, except you could feasibly... Well, no, because the caparison is obviously under the armor that's on their face and neck, so presumably if there was armor on their chest as well, it would go over the caparison rather than under it. Even from a cosmetic standpoint, the caparison is mostly cosmetic. But in terms of their weapons, oh my god, those look heavy. No, I'm sorry, this is too much. Too much metal. Too much metal here. Not liking it. Still better than the dual glaive, because these weapons at least have butts. But no. Just no. Don't like it. Not a fan. These guys, the Glade Lords and the Glade Riders, who I guess, like, presumably they ride with glaives rather than actually riding their glaives. Naming conventions, I get it. It's hard. They do have the same exact weapon as all the other units in the Dorwinian expanded roster. But as I've started to say twice now, and distracted myself both times, there are a couple of advantages to using this weapon on horseback, okay? One of which being that cavalry is usually farther spaced apart than infantry, so you're less likely to hit your fellow soldier, although these ones are actually really close together, so I don't know, maybe I shouldn't give them that point, because I do feel like they're gonna get smashed together, like, even if not before the charge, then at least after the charge, and in the course of the charge, they're going to get smashed together really close, and they're going to be slashing at guys on the ground and accidentally hitting each other in the face. But that is only one of the advantages to using this weapon on horseback. It is true that using it on horseback makes you much more likely to kill your own horse than your own buddy. In this unit, your buddy is a lot safer than your horse is. And that plays into reason number 2, which is that you are a lot less likely to stab yourself in the groin if the secondary blade of your weapon has to pass through your horse and your saddle in order to get to it. So yes, there are a couple of advantages to wielding it on horseback. But the last one, the third one, the best one, the most serious of all of these, is, of course, transportational. You see, there's a very serious, unfunny, definitely real, historically precedented reason why a cavalryman, in particular, would take a dual-bladed glaive to war. And that is, it makes you move faster through swampy or rivery or oceanic terrain. Because what you can do is you can stick your arm out behind your horse's rump, very far behind, unless you want to cut off his tail, and just spin it around really fast, and what that will do is it will make your horse move very quickly through water. Okay, so fast, in fact, that his rump at first will go down deeper into the water, and then, as you pick up speed, you will actually tilt him up to rise basically above the water, and he can just stand still as the force of your propeller scoots him along the surface like a motorboat. Okay? And if anyone doubts the efficacy of this use of that type of weapon, then I have to ask you, how did a Mormon wind up in Australia if not by motorboating a horse's ass?